My name's host Eric, host talking to Fin people, and we are here to answer the question: how do you personally type people? Well, the weird thing is, in my going about my business life, I probably don't usually default to typing people. Sometimes I'll note certain cognitive functions in action sometimes, and then that'll make me kind of wonder about their type. But I don't normally type people in real life. When I type people on the internet when they're answering questions, I think that the most informative kind of questions are about F and T. So I start with that. I narrow down with that first. I go, all right, well, let's see. What kind of F are they? Are they caring about their own emotions or somebody else's emotions? Are they managing people by making sure that the people are happy with them, or are they deciding about people because of how they feel about them? And then after that, I usually go to the T stuff and try to figure out if they want to figure it out themselves, or if they want to know a set of steps, if they're algorithmic or if they're constructive in their thinking. After that, I usually know by then. But see, sometimes it bites me in the ass because I might get F, E, and T, I right and have an INFJ on my hands. And that's when that strategy doesn't work. So then you got to watch out for INFJs. If there weren't any INFJs, typing would be a lot easier.
Using that distinction, right?
Right, yeah.
Like the FT, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's my initial thoughts. I'd love to hear other voices.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tanor, you go, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, jump in.
I don't really know. I think I'm really into the PJ distinction, I think, as the first pass. And what it does for me is it gives me a sense of ultimately just like egocentrism or allocentrism, especially if somebody's dominant in that PJ.
What's allocentrism mean?
Allocentrism is aware of it's the subject being aware of themselves via the environment. So it's a position taken with respect to. It's a relative position. And egocentrism is of the subject. There's cool in psychology, for example. There are cool neurological distinctions. People can lose allocentric perspectives of space, but not egocentric, and vice versa. So they can report to you where they exist with respect to their surroundings or with respect to themselves, but not the other. And that's how we know that there are two different types of self-perception. So that, to me, so the egocentrism, for me, I find egocentrism versus allocentrism is most informative because it tells me whether or not they're leading with an internal or external judgment function. People who are egocentric are often leading with an internally directed judgment function. And so even if it's not their dominant function, it's going to be their next one, right? It's going to be their, what do you call it? Auxiliary.
Yeah.
So that, and then at that point, the judgment itself, like the styles of judgments that they're making, become pretty apparent, like whether it's F or T, and then you're pretty much set.
That's interesting. I have to explore that a little bit more when I'm asking people questions. So what kind of questions would you ask to determine allo or egocentrism?
So you had a really good approach. Like when I've never asked people in order to type them, and I wish I had a tool set like yours. Like when you were like, okay, you had like 10, and you knew by number 4 or whatever. Like I was, damn, those are good questions. Like those are good typing questions. So I try to observe. I try not to type actually first, and then.
What does an allocentric person? I'm assuming that I'm egocentric, right? So what does an allocentric person? How will they manifest differently or display differently than I display?
They would want, for example, any F or T J's. Any J's will be concerned with order, and they will refer to that order. You know what I've been thinking about recently. The English denotation of order is almost always, well, It's more the connotation, I think, that is relevant, although it's hard to determine. Anyway, I know I'm going cyclical here, but what I've realized is that we typically use order to refer to the external world. And we know, for example, that J's like to organize things, structure things, etc., etc. But the more I talk to P-types, the more I realize like how badly they want to order things as well. It's just that they want to order seem as though they're a singularity, but it's the self. Like it's all the thoughts and feelings that go on in the inside, and they're really quite motivated to order those things. And
you're totally right on the fucking money, and that's what this YouTube channel is in part. Is one thing I'm frustrated with is poorly organized, but I'm trying to organize it a little bit better.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, so, that's good to hear, because I've been thinking for a while, it doesn't make sense to me that J-types would be so much more like anal, about like structuring things, and yet P-types are always so much more obstinate in their personal views. Like, if you talk to a P-type about a J-type, it's like, God, they're such an asshole because they just want to control everything. Yeah, try to get a P-type to do something they don't want to do. Like, they're just as bad. This is what I mean. So then I started realizing, like, I bet you P-types just have just as much of a conviction to organize, but it's the inner world. And then that's why they're so obstinate about doing things that aren't within their belief, because it's like, I don't need to do that. I need to get this shit organized first. Similarly, that's why it's really quite difficult to get a J-type to tell you what they really think or what they really feel, because it's like, I don't need to deal with that. I'm trying to organize the outside world right now.
Right. Well, it's great have you put it that way, because I like to think of the four functions with the orientations or attitudes, whatever you call it, as being the one you assume takes care of itself. So, like, for me, I assume my own feelings are going to take care of themselves. I'm going to worry about their feelings. And for my intuition, I assume the whole truths are going to take care of themselves. I don't need to really learn how to recognize those. I'm just going to learn how to build off of them. Not really ever consciously being aware of the fact that, well, you must be recognizing them if you're building off of them, right? And so you have to develop that skill. And then with a T, it's like, well, I don't need to worry about whether they understand. I need to worry about whether it's logically consistent in my own head, which is the conflict we had, right? Where you're like, well, you're not making me understand enough. I'm like, well, it's there. Matter. The point is, it's there. It's sound. It'll come out eventually in various forms.
Yeah. So then I would go one step further. What I've started to realize about myself, for example, is that with my TI, the frustration with anything, NI or TI, it turns out is actually not that others don't get it. It's that I don't get it. And when others don't get it, it manifests that frustration that I have about myself. Yeah, so and whether that's a perceptive or judgment trait, a perceiving or judging trait. Like when I think about what really stresses me out, turns out it's not whether or not other people understand my NI or my worldview. It's whether or not I'm ever going to solve it before I die. I don't care if you solve it. I'm actually terrified that I'm never going to really see it. And same with TI.
What stresses me out is not whether you agree or understand, but whether you're playing fair.
Which, do you wonder if maybe that reflects... Do you think maybe that reflects the fact that you're frustrated about whether or not you're playing fair?
No. I know I'm playing fair.
That's fine. That's fine.
Because I passed reciprocal avoidance test. That's how I define fair. In that context,
but what
remember,
if fair?
framework.
But what? Yeah, and I just means. And what if fairness extends beyond simply rhetoric or debates?
Well, then, if you're talking about that kind of fairness, then you need to go do that fairness yourself instead of advocating that we as a group do it.
No, but I'm not. No. I'm just asking you if you yourself, Eric, experience that you might be transgressing on what is fair.
Yes, I have personal ethics that are beyond the ethics ascribed for public policy, for sure. I feel as though I have obligations beyond negative rights obligations, for sure.
Okay, yeah. And that's all I was trying to get at here. So if we zoom back out into typology, that's what I was trying to tie in here.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. And I think that the problem is that people don't make that distinction between personal ethics and public ethics.
It's hard. It's real hard, though. I mean, it's actually not that easy, in the sense that you can even build an entirely sound rhetorical space, and you can still fail to incorporate the distinction between what is personal and what is shared.
No, I think
And
I
like
disagree
one
with that.
can. I don't just mean, well,
Because of the you own your own body thing. Logically, that defeats what you just said. You can't have an adjudicatory mechanism that is fair, that involves us all forcing each other to do shit, that also allows that kind of arbitrariness.
okay, but I think that's a misconstrual of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are other ways to be unfair
Yes,
that are not approached or encapsulated within a debate logical framework.
that's true. There's lots of ways to be unfair.
That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And that's why I said, and therefore, that's why debate can sometimes fail, because it turns out the root source of the problem is not one that can be touched with logic.
Right. The root source of the problem in that instance is a failure to engage an adequate amount of discourse to get to the correct conclusion. It's not.
But what if it, and do you think that all discourse has to be, let me say this, I don't think, while I agree with that point, I don't think that the discourse needs to be a rhetorical logical. I'm absolutely with you that that failures
For
are
non-public
often
policy, I agree with you 100%. I'm not saying that rhetorical discourse, adversarial rhetorical discourse, is the means by which all problems should be dealt with. I'm not saying that it's the solution to all problems. I'm saying that if you think it's the solution to a public policy problem, then this thing that's not adversarial discourse, then 99% chance the thing you're talking about is not within the jurisdiction of public policy.
Yeah, and I think when I started that train of thought, I wasn't even talking about public policy.
It's important to keep the frames in mind. You know, it matters.
Yeah, well, no, but it does matter, and I was speaking from the fundamental frame that we both shared, which is we were talking about fairness, and we were talking about ways to.
Wait, hold on. Fucking
Yep.
Conte, come here. Conte, come here. Conte, come here. No, Lacey. No, Compton. No. It was not the mailman.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump here a little bit. I don't know if I have enough working memory to pull it all the way back in to this point, so I'm just gonna say I'll depart. If I manage to make it back, that's good. What do you think about the idea that the current order of public policy and the political game and the soundbite culture surrounding it? What do you think about the idea that reflects a need of individuals that is not being met with a debate-style discourse?
Well, it's not being met by a debate-style discourse because it's not being engaged with by a debate-style discourse. I agree with you that they're meeting a need that's non-discursive, and the need is the need for a bad guy mostly. The need to find somebody to put blame upon, and not understanding that we're all to blame, that we are all to blame for being sloppy in our discourse.
Yep. Only in our discourse?
Yeah, of course.
Only in the discourse.
Well, because remember, we're talking about laws being passed. Now, if you're on the floor of Congress and a bad law is passed, then we were sloppy with our discourse.
Yeah, but maybe people don't want rules changed because they were built for shitty reasons. Maybe people want rules changed because they're looking for somebody to blame for something they did that has nothing to do with the law, and now the law's in the way, so I want it changed.
Right. So
like
that's shitty
I guess
discourse. I mean, that's really shitty discourse. That's saying like I'm not even considering reciprocity here at all. I have just purely selfish reasons for public policy.
Exactly, and I'm saying, don't you think that in so many ways, the reason why we're here is because that's what's happening, and that
discourse hasn't made that shameful.
I guess what I'm thinking is, even if you made it shameful, then people would just orient away from discourse because they're like, I don't.
No,
as
not
you
the
said,
discourse.
I'm
talking about individuals making political decisions for self-interest reasons. That,
Yeah.
that we know that it's sort of a crime and stuff, but we're not engaged in the discourse at a deep enough level to understand why it's so awful and what it means, really. And we just sort of, like, there was a time when I was younger that you'd hear commonly in political stuff and, like, opinion pieces or whatever, somebody would be critiqued for justifying the means with the ends, as though that were obviously axiomatically unacceptable way to support a bad behavior. But that's no longer an accepted axiom. My position is it ought to be, because justifying your crimes by saying it's going to produce good outcomes is not a way to run a country.
Yeah, definitely not. And I guess what I'm saying is moving out of discourse and just moving into the needs of the individual. Can you imagine that some of the current state of political affairs are reflecting the fact that people have needs that are not being met in that discourse, however good or bad it is? It's like, that's what I mean. You could even fully optimize the system, spend an infinite amount of time, but at the end of the day, people have needs outside of that.
Sure, and people have all sorts of assumptions about the nature of the community, what their role in the community is, what the community's role in their life is, all those sort of things. And is it true that the current political system is failing to make people feel as though they are a participatory member of a citizen democracy?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I would say that the answer to that is the same answer as always to almost everything, which is more discourse. Bad discourse is fine because bad discourse elicits growth in discourse. I encourage you to make your bad arguments. And whoever you are, right? Like, come and make bad arguments to me. Make them to your fellow bad argument makers. I don't care. The fact is, when they're out there, some smartass is going to come by on the comment and leave a smartass comment and make you feel bad about yourself. Because why? You said something really fucking dumb, and you're advocating for public policy here, and so you deserve it. You got it coming to you. And
yeah, totally.
That's how we meet people's needs with discourse. See, the reason people's needs aren't being currently met with discourse is because they keep trying to hammer in nails with a screwdriver and screw in nails with a hammer.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Anyway.
I mean, I didn't even... yeah. So, I still feel as if the point is just being... It's not even being subverted. It's just being kind of narrowed down. It's being dialed down into a very local frame. Which
I'm trying to make it so that we aren't on disagreement about something, right? Like...
No, yeah.
I acknowledge that there's plenty of aspects of life in which we need to worry about whether individuals' needs are being met. Public policy is not one of them. We need to worry about whether the public policy is such that individuals can meet their own needs via the infrastructure it provides. Yeah. And then not worry about what they do with it unless it's a problem fundamentally with the infrastructure that displays itself as everybody keeps crashing around this corner. Well, let's make it a little bit less of a sharp corner or something. You know?
So what do you think about instating public policy based on means that are not debate oriented? Like, for example, if a bunch of individuals collectively share a need, it's like everybody keeps crashing around this corner, right? So all these individuals are like, well, shit, I need to stop crashing around this corner, and so they organize a structure that they're actually not interested in debating about. They are interested in the needs that it serves, because this corner isn't, for example, one that I'm driving my car around. It's a spiritual one or an artistic one. Or
how big is the group?
I don't know. It could be global, because at the end of the day, as you've said, like it's just the amalgam of a bunch of different individuals.
But you're assuming they're all in agreement, right?
Yeah, well, that's the only reason why you would even
see. This is the problem.
Get that?
We can't. There's no possible dream, even the slightest hope of us ever agreeing on anything, if we don't agree on how. If we don't agree on how we come to agreement, not what to come to agreement.
No, I'm with you. Okay, so check this out. Right. So what I'm suggesting is that the how could be not just through debate and discourse.
You haven't given me an alternative. You just said everyone agrees.
Okay, so, and that's what I was trying to get at when I say art, whatever. How? It would be like through emotion, for example. But that's why I said, like, also, like, things like arts or spiritual needs or whatever, Because there is a lot of fundamental agreement in the form of an unquantified or discretized human experience. Like, before I give it a label, right? Before I even call it a feeling, or a thought, or before I even call it...
We do agree upon the good. In general,
Yeah.
we do agree upon the good. Nobody's
I
disputing
think
that.
we do too, yeah.
Nobody's disputing that.
And-
the problem is, public policy doesn't require us to agree upon the good. It requires us to agree upon what kind of inadequacy are we going to apply here. Because
But what if
in
we
fact there's a
equated...
real... Go ahead.
What if we equated public policy with that which promotes good?
How?
Only? By having people meet those needs as they see fit.
Who meets what needs is who sees fit.
The individual is faced with only their own needs, right? Like, the individual has their own needs. It gets weird because some people have individual needs to serve others and deal with others, or to reject others, or to dominate others. But you can imagine if the people being dominated or served aren't okay with being dominated or served, meaning they have needs which are not to be dominated or served, then they would just they would naturally hold against that. So when I think about a bunch of
Sounds
public
like
policies that are...
I think you're sort of getting at maybe something like Megabro's person-centric morality framework, which is a perfectly reasonable approach to go if that's what you're getting at. I think it says it basically affords a new right, the right to non-association.
Yeah. Although, for me, what I find is that I can accomplish that need of mine. So if the right is intended to meet somebody's need, right? So you have the right of non-association.
It's not intended to be. It confers a duty on another person. You have the duty not to force your association upon me.
Oh, but I thought you said it was a right.
That's what rights are. That a right is that which confers a duty upon another. So if I have a negative right to non-interference, which I do, then that means you have a duty not to transgress upon me. And it's why we often...
Sorry, it confers duties onto others.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fine.
That's
so
why
what
we
I
wanna
find is that...
only talk about actual rights. When we say somebody has a right to health care or something, that's not a right. They're talking about an entitlement, and you can't have positive rights except through contract. Like if I go to Denny's, order food, they have a right to demand money from me before I leave because I've already eaten their food. You know, that's a positive right. That's a contractual right. But natural rights or negative rights are not positive rights. You're not entitled to things. Others have a duty not to do shit.
Yeah. So I suppose for me, the actual political external state of affairs begins to matter very, very little the minute that I assign and extract the rights for myself to myself. That is to say, when things are present in the external world, that I, as a member of the collective, I totally agree with you that the collective is nothing but a bunch of individuals all grouped together, and they might be there consensually or not. But at the end of the day, they are there. So, for me, myself as a member of that collective, there's a bunch of shit that I'm not into. And then what I do is, well, therefore, that means I have needs that don't meet the central tendency of this group. And the group will kind of really only have needs that fit their central tendency. Because the minute that it doesn't, right, the minute that it moves towards this end, the extremes of the distribution, you have anarchy or revolt or a change in state or whatever you want to call it, change in party. But basically, the point is, I am within this group as a member of that collective, and currently they're not meeting my needs, which is to say they're not meeting my idiosyncratic, personal, individualistic desires. So then I find a way to meet that desire, and I immediately relieve the tension and stress, of course, not only from, I would say, of course I do from the people that I'm asking to give me the rights normally, but I've already accepted that they're not going to. They're not going to meet my needs. So I relieve them of that burden, and I also relieve myself of the burden of not having my personal need met. And I accomplish this most often, one accomplishes this most often, is what I mean, right? By very frequently looking towards discourse and things like that. To like this, for example, me talking to you in this way is meeting a need that I have as an individual that is not being met by my current professional or otherwise relational statuses in the groups that I'm affiliated with. So I'm here because I've got this need and I want to meet it, and it feels good. But the result of that, God damn it, I just snapped. What happened? Oh, the result of that is that I also don't overtax that particular mode of meeting my needs. That is to say, there are other times when my needs aren't being met, and I try to meet it by other mediums.
Sure.
Like meditating.
And
or
I think this is
a
good thing you just described there is how ideally community should be structured. You talk about the collective, but really we're talking about multiple consensual overlapping groups and one non-consensual group, or maybe more than one, depending on how old you are. If you're in school, or if you're a member of a nation state, you're an American non-consensually. I'm a Californian non-consensually. Now, you might say I'm a Temple Cityan as well, but Temple City doesn't really put any demands upon me. So it's hard to say that you know. The point being, most of the groups I'm engaged in are mostly consensual. This is the only group that I engage in which is 100% entirely consensual on all parties' sides. And I like that about it a lot, you know.
Right.
I stress when people come and they say, oh, sorry, I had to bail. I say, no, you come and go as you please. We're all about autonomy. There's no expectations, no sorries, no, you know. But I was expecting, In fact, there's something I'm still feeling guilty about. I feel guilty about QB Sauce, who I haven't seen since this occurred, we were having a session. I was talking to somebody, and I wasn't checking the chat, as I often don't, and it doesn't automatically pop up and scroll down for me. It will pop up a little bubble, but sometimes I miss it, and it doesn't scroll down to the bottom. So even if I have it open, I sometimes get stuck in the middle. Anyway, QB Sauce had put a link that they really wanted me to see, and apparently we were like waiting a long time for me to look at this link and comment upon it. And then at the end, ended up bailing and put something in the chat. I didn't see it until after the whole thing was over, and I felt really bad. At the same time, that's the sort of thing that happens with expectations. And there's little harm, there's little damage done to the relationships to minimize expectations in this context. And potentially, though, no matter how hard you try to minimize them, no matter how hard you try to structure it so there aren't any, people unavoidably have some expectations, and you know, people can. I genuinely feel bad about it. It's like, fuck, that person wanted me to see this link and comment on it and was waiting there for like 2 hours. I'm talking, I was just blithely unaware. Of course, logically, I go, well, they could turn on their mic and say, "Hey, Eric," right? But you know, not everybody is bold necessarily, and a lot of people in these rooms aren't very bold. Like, we've got a bunch of people in here. I've tried to encourage on a couple of occasions other people to have their voices come into the equation, and they prefer to participate by either chat or just listening, or maybe it's just something they have in the background as they're gardening, or I don't know. But the point is, I have to respect the fact that not everybody wants to speak with their voices and their faces. They want to speak with their typing. That's fine. I accept that. And I try to stay on top of the chat. I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I just feel bad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think you were tying that in at some point in terms of like consensual. It was like you said this is a wholly consensual atmosphere.
Thank you. As you just said, wrap it up like that. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right.
Any comments on that?
Myself, or you're asking the group here?
Anybody, but I'm not expecting any response from the group, as I haven't really gotten much. If anybody has any comment from the group, please chime in anytime.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm going to try to figure out how to distill this into something more concise, so that if and when I come back on, I'll be able to open with that reference frame, and then kind of develop from there. Because I think this is ultimately what I find is that there's a lot that I can develop in terms of listening to your ability to debate. So there's a lot that I can learn through doing that. Though I think, as I said before, my interest in doing that is not strictly so I can learn how to debate. I'm then interested in applying that in particular avenues that interest me. So
well, listen, I tell
if
you
I
what,
can figure
Tanner,
out-
after I'm president of the United States, I'll come be president of Canada for you, okay?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So let's end on that note. Thanks a lot for watching. Thank you all for being here. It's been a great session. It's been a blast, Tanner, chatting with you. You're welcome back anytime. No expectations, though. No stems, no seeds, no stress, as they say. Have a great day, everybody.